So to continue where we left off, we were talking about this idea of les problématiques à un plan. So let's say you have a give. Let's say we're going to talk about what a good problématique is and what a good plan is, but it's very important. Let's say from the point of view of intonation, that where your introduction ends and where it begins, where your first part ends and begins, right? And you can do that, and you have to really you should really think of the fact that you've already had your, épreuve d'admission, you've already had your written part. You should really exploit the fact that you're actually speaking. Really use your physical presence to the most. It's something that you should not really, I mean, I can see what might be sort of intimidating, but instead of it being something that scares you, it should really something you should think of it as something that can really enable to make your presentation clearer, right? And so it's very important, for example, to think of, in your introduction, the most important thing that you're going to do, right? This way is going to, let's say, announce what you call your problématique. And I'm actually going to, I think it's easier if I talk about the set of documents that you have received this week, which is the set of documents on women's rights, right? So let's just say, for example, I'm giving my introduction, and maybe I'll go through what you should put in introduction, and then I'll kind of show how you can go that. So notice you walk into the room with the jury, right? Okay, you have you are going to sit in your desk. It's very, by the way, it's a very important idea to have sort of a stopwatch, right? Use a stopwatch, meaning I would say, and have one that don't try to use a clock. Really have a stopwatch where you set it for 20 minutes and it counts backwards, and it's extremely clear where you are. You look at it and you know that you have 3 minutes left, or that you've already spent 15 minutes or something like that. You don't want to. You want to make this as easy as it. Don't make it harder than it has to be, right? So you sit down, you present your documents, and it's extremely important that you can clearly present these set of documents. So the first thing you want to do is just say, to give a sort of a broad, sort of what we call in English a topic sentence. That the first sentence is going to be, today I'm going to talk about a set of documents that is about women's rights. Bam, right? You see, and that is a short sentence, and you have the first thing you've done is to identify the main theme, right? It's very basic, right? But you would be surprised at how many candidates let that simple information kind of get buried right in a flow of words. So that when I talk about intonation, the thing that you want to make the key words really stick out, and you want to use pauses. So it's extremely impressive if you have a candidate, and very few do. It's really to your advantage if you're able to come in and say, okay, today I would like to talk about a set of documents that is about women's rights. Right? And notice how I've really said women's rights, right? Really accentuated those two words, and I've actually made a pause at the end. Now this means I'm going to be giving lots of different kind of clues about method. Notice you're not reading. It doesn't matter if you hesitate or if you say a word and you correct yourself. That doesn't matter at all, right? You'll be much clearer if you're really kind of thinking as you're speaking. But you can. That is something you could just write, topic women rights. You don't want to memorize that first sentence. If you do, it'll be not very naturally be wondering if you said what you memorized. You don't want to do that. You don't be reading. You want to really, it makes it much more difficult to convey your message and have a real contact with these two jury members. You really want to establish a kind of a contact, and you won't be able to do it if you're reading, and you will be penalized you're not allowed to. And if you have 3 hours, that's not at all the best way to spend your time, right? Yeah, you should try to spend your time really organizing your ideas and sort of practicing how you're going to say them. So that first sentence is a topic sentence. Then what you're going to do is you're going to want to remember this, la consigne, la mise en relation des documents, right? So you're going to have a very brief, I would say, sort of a 2-sentence presentation of each document. Now, as far as this set of documents about women's rights that we've seen, you could say, and I forget the order, but you could say the first document in the set of documents is an excerpt from the Jane Austen novel Pride and Prejudice about a woman being forced to take a man's hand. Okay. The next, and now you're going to move on to the next one. Notice we're going to mise en relation. We're going to compare them. The next set of documents is a little bit different. It's a more contemporary. It is the article written by Gloria Steinem about. Notice you just say the basic idea about the fact that women who participate in sort of left-wing liberation movements are actually subjected. Okay, so that's that. You've given the basic idea. Okay, the next document is a painting, right? You say from the from the Victorian period, mid-Victorian period. The Hunt painting called the Awakening Conscience, which portrays a man and what appears to be his mistress playing the piano together, and we see her kind of moving upwards, and it's difficult to know if he's restraining her or not. Right. So you don't want to. That was perhaps almost too much. No more than 3 sentences. And the final document we will be considered is going to be is an excerpt from the Rachel Maddow show, in which we see the then candidate Trump in a interview with a journalist, Chris Matthews, about the question of abortion and controlling a woman's body. That's all you notice. I'm not analyzing, right? I'm in the introduction. All I want to do is give a succinct, right, 2 or 3, no more than 3 sentence presentation of what the main idea presented in this document is, right? Okay, that's all you want to do in the beginning. You said this is first sentence. This is what this set of documents is about. The first one, this, okay, and you're not getting bogged. You don't want to get stuck in sort of involved explanations. The difficulty of this is to think of main idea. How can I succinctly present this? Now, and notice when I was kind of improvising there, right? You see, I hadn't decided before. I was kind of purposefully sort of showing you that you don't. I would just say for each one, in your notes I would just have a keyword for each document, sort of 2 or 3 keywords, and that keyword, right, is the one that you want to really stick out. And notice you're going to want to have a sort of a pause after when you go from one document to the other. You want to make it easy, right? You want the best, and it's very rare. The best presentations are the ones where the members of the jury, they're not looking at each other and saying what something. So what did the candidate say there? It's extremely clear what you're saying. The pause is necessary. It helps them to write. They're following you from the beginning to the end, and they're not really struggling to follow, to keep up with you, or they're not kind of stuck in a lengthy explanation that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Okay, so once you've presented this set of documents, the next thing you want to do is to begin in this sort of expansion towards this sort of basic description, towards the I would say announcement of what your problématique is, right? Okay, so you're going to want to in a sort of say, well, as we've seen, this whole there seems to be a sort of a paradox between situations where women may seem to have some kind of a freedom. For example, we have in the painting by Hunt, we have this woman who there's the notion of sort of an awakening. We see that she's in sort of the situation of leisure, and she seems to be sort of in a sort of exalted state of mind. We might seem to her to be sort of in some sense a free woman. And yet, as we've seen, or in, let's say, the Jane Austen novel, we get this perhaps some kind of a sense of freedom, because we have this woman, Fanny Price, the character in the novel Pride and Prejudice, seems to be given sort of a choice what she wants to do. So we get the impression that there might be freedom, right? But if we look at these examples more carefully, this doesn't really seem to be the case. There seems to be, even in where we have even in examples where women are being sort of given the most freedom, these seem to be actually the places where they're also the most constrained. So this leads us to our main question, right? Notice, and you're going to